our next speaker is the mayor of Lancaster, and Lancaster is a really interesting story. I mean, initially when I heard about Lancaster having ambitions to be the solar capital of the world, I was like, why would you do that? I mean, look at the Germans. I mean, my goodness, the Germans with the solar insolation equivalent of Juneau, Alaska, are leading the world in solar. This is quite an amazing story. Why is California behind? Why isn't LA taking the lead? What is happening with feed-in tariffs? What's going on? And then all of a sudden, there's the city of Lancaster. And the city of Lancaster has a really aggressive attitude, and it's kind of like the new kid on the block saying, you know what, you all talk about it, you all greenwash things, we're gonna get it done. And we're going to have rules that make it happen, and we're going to have ordinances that make it happen. They instituted the first ordinance of all new construction incorporating solar. They just did it overnight. They wrote the ordinances and made it happen. And the man behind it all, the mover and the shaker, is the mayor. And this is a top-down approach accepted by the community at large, and it has been amazingly wonderful to watch, and I think that a lot of us can learn many things from what the city of Lancaster is doing. And I see that Mary Leslie is here with the LA Business Council. Maybe we can take some of that experience and get LA moving a little bit more too, because heck, you know, we should be able to supply a lot more than we do with solar in Southern California. So my pleasure, and he's a wonderful speaker and you'll enjoy it. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce you to three of the people that are my interests in life, and that is Abigail, Elizabeth, and Ethan, and they are my grandchildren. And you know, when I think about the future they could have, the absolute wonderful future they could have of abundance, it is mind-boggling. You know, the history of this world has been written by those who had access to power. England dominated the world because they had surface coal that was easy to get to. We dominated the world because we had bubbling crude coming out of the ground. Remember the Beverly Hillbillies? It actually bubbled up out of the ground. And that was the reason we actually have dominated this planet for so many years. And now, for the first time in history, we have affordable power available to the entire world. What they could create, how utterly magnificent their lives should be. But there's a small problem. The problem with climate change is we can't see it. You know, we can't see it coming. Nobody can see it. You know, not too long ago, I went to the doctor and he did some tests, and then he called me up on the phone and he said, your Gleason score is not good, which meant I had cancer. Now, he didn't see that. He didn't even know the person who saw it. I certainly never knew the person who saw it, but because somebody saw it, I then went on this quest to find out, were they going to cut it out, burn it out, or poison it? Or were they going to do all three? Well, but that decision, you know, I had to make because somebody I didn't know saw it, saw something. It's okay, worked out, I made the right choices. I'm here for a while. If somebody could see this thing coming at us, like an asteroid, and they said it's 50, 100 years away, this room would be filled, and it would have been filled 10 years ago. And we would have all come together and worked as collectively as the world to divert that course. But what is coming at us is just as bad. And so many of us know it. So many of us, I mean, it's unimaginable what is coming our way. And that is precisely what's going to speed it up. You know, as hard as it is for this group to believe, I'm from Lancaster. I don't know that we have any Democrats there. It is a very conservative area. And one time I was having lunch with the highest ranking Republican elected official. Don't worry, you don't know him, he's so far down the list. But he was telling me essentially this. This is what he believed. And, we're having the discussion as to how could you possibly believe something like that? More importantly, how could you possibly have a role in leadership and not know the answer to this? I mean, think about it. Thousands and thousands of respected scientists telling us how bad it's going to be. But he chooses to believe this. Now, why does that happen? As of 2013, and it's moved a little bit. Those who say that global warming is happening because of human activity, it was divided along party lines. 66% of the Democrats believe it's caused by human activity, and it's our fault because we phrase it that way. We should be rephrasing it as toxic waste, industrial waste. When you say human activity, that means I'm doing something. The natural default position is to resist it. We need to change the way we talk about this stuff. Independents, 43%, and Republicans, 24%. But this is the scary one. 28% of college graduated Republicans don't believe only 28% believe it's caused by human activity. 86% of college educated Democrats believe it. Now let me ask you something. Do you really think you're that much smarter than me? I mean, the truth of it is it's become a tribal choice. If you belong to this tribe, you deny it. If you belong to this tribe, you believe it. But I would venture to guess that most of the people in this room who are deeply involved in this subject have no idea what causes it. I mean, the actual science of why the Earth is warming. You get a vague idea of it, but how does the radiant energy from the sun turn into heat? Despite what you might believe, the sun's not hot. The energy that reaches us is not hot. I mean, if it was, it wouldn't be colder as we got closer to it, right? It's radiant energy that is converted to infrared, and then that's heat. When you have just that basic understanding of it, it gets a little more understandable why CO2 in the environment could do this to us. We've neglected to educate people as to what is causing this. And then we get angry because they make a choice based on something other than knowledge. But do you see why they're able to do it? Why they're able to make a convincing argument? You just shorten the time span. You create the conclusion you want by how long you look at it. But where we fail is we're not constantly getting the message out visually. I mean, you can't argue with this, can you? But it doesn't describe well. You can't just say it. We have to do a better job of educating our citizens why this isn't just a cool thing to do. Most of the people in a large section of this country just think this is just another yuppie fad. They really do. They just think it's something people are trying to be cool with. And it's very difficult to get people to understand the severity of what's facing us. And Dan Ariely did an excellent chapter in his book on it. For one thing, they don't see the suffering. This climate change is causing unbelievable suffering throughout the world. That particular picture was taken several years ago. The photographer who took it took the picture and left, leaving that child to literally be torn apart by that vulture. When what he did came home to him, I think it was a year or 2 years later, he committed suicide. But we can become so calloused to other people's suffering. And in this case, we don't even see it. But most of the problems that are happening in the Middle East and in Africa are directly related to climate change. You know, in the Middle East, what's happened is the farms have dried up and people are moving into the cities. It was a fragile government to begin with. Now it has doubled the population. But don't think that that's not happening to us. You know, what's going on in the San Joaquin Valley and what's happening to the aquifer because of the oil dumping into it, dumping directly into the aquifer. That could be us tomorrow. There's a feeling or a recognition that it's something that happens to other people. It's not going to happen to us. And it's slow. You know, when I get up in the morning and look in the mirror, I'm always shocked because I don't envision gray hair. I don't see myself as 62 years old, you know. It's a shock to me because it was such a slow progression. You don't recognize slow progressions. You know, in Lancaster, when I was growing up there, it was 104, 105 in the summers. I'm now having 115-degree summers. You know, this last summer, we had to go to Walmart, buy water, and have the deputies distribute it to the homeless because they were literally in danger of dying. That's how it's starting to affect us. The feeling that it's just a drop in the bucket. And you know, and I get that at these conferences. I get that overriding feeling every time. And the reason I get that is because where's the urgency? Recognize what we are doing here. It's not something that's going to happen in 50 years that we can fix. In 50 years, that's the symptom. That's when we die. What's happening is now. In 50 years, it's way too late. There are very, very bright people that think it's too late now. And where's the urgency in these meetings? Why isn't this the primary thing we think about, everybody involved in government? It's because of what Dan Ariely says. You know, we're predictably irrational, and it's an irrational approach we have. And the fact that it's far in the future is just what I just covered. No, it's not far in the future. It's now. We just suffer the consequences in the future. That is New York with Hurricane Sandy. That really happened. That was a Category 1 hurricane. Imagine a Category 5, which is inevitable if we don't do something. As bleak as it is, there's always a silver lining. At least there is for Lancaster, because we did win the lotto. We can produce more kilowatts from the sun than any other place in the country, perhaps the world, because of our unique altitude, air quality, longitude, latitude. It all came together, and we're the center. And we have transmission lines because of the wind energy into Tehachapi, 20 minutes away. And we have a market, which is Los Angeles. We will be selling Santa Monica power before you know it. The city, 97% of all of our electricity in the buildings we own comes from the sun. In the schools, 80% comes from the sun. And how we were able to get the schools to do it is we developed a financing plan that was backed by the city to make it happen. We're making money. It didn't cost us money to do this. Lancaster doesn't have any money. You know, we have the highest unemployment of any city in LA County. We have the most problems of any city in LA County. We used to have the highest crime rate. Now we're much, much lower. We had more people killed by gang violence in 2008. And by 2011, not one person died from gang violence. You know, what we found is when we start looking at problems innovatively,
Small city is countable.
We start attacking everything with innovation. Everything changes. And that's one of the great things about us deciding we were going to be the first net zero city in the world. And in fact, we're going to be next year. Imagine that, 2015. And we did it simply because we decided to do it. It was that easy. It was a recognition that, no, this is not something we can do in a lackadaisical manner, that we really had to take risks. We had to take political risks. You know, only 24% of the people in my city think human beings have anything to do with climate change. Imagine the uphill battle it might have been. But what we're finding is it's not. What we're finding is they're seeing the economic opportunities and they're loving it. You know, I get almost no pushback at all.
This small city is California's biggest energy boom town, Lancaster, in California's Mojave Desert. It averages about 300 days per year of the most intense sunlight in the country.
We intend to figure out a way to use it the most efficiently than anywhere in the world.
3 years ago, Mayor Parris set a net zero power goal to harness the energy from the sun and become 100% power independent. Today, the city is halfway there and produces the most solar power per resident in the state.
We would be the deepest well if you were to imagine that was oil. And what's oil but power? And what is solar but power?
How hard has it been to get people on board with solar energy?
The city has just embraced it.
Solar panels are just about everywhere, on downtown rooftops, at schools. Even the baseball stadium can power itself almost entirely by the sun.
They produce about 97% of the energy that's used in those facilities.
Jason Cottle is the deputy city manager and oversaw the installation of more than 6,000 panels in city buildings. The city leases them from a private company.
We paid 10 cents a kilowatt hour.
Okay.
We were getting charged from the utility companies about 18 cents a kilowatt hour. So we saved the difference.
It's made a big difference to the city's budget, saving more than $250,000 each year in energy costs. The mayor plans to save even more.
We will be net zero within the next 3 years, and the goal is eventually this city becomes independent of the grid.
And next year, this city takes another step closer toward its net zero goal, with a new law requiring solar panel installation in every single new home.
You know, you would have thought that the developers would have got together and kicked me out of office over that one. But the reality is something far different. We worked with KB Homes. We developed a plan to start getting solar panels on every house. They recognize it's just the beginning, that within a couple of years we're going to pass an ordinance that every house has to be net zero, because they're able to do it now. And let me tell you a little bit how that story developed. You know, all of the cities, we're trying to get clean industry into our cities. We're trying to get jobs. And so I'm going back and forth to China, and we're trying to get BYD, Build Your Dreams, one of the largest companies in China, to come to Lancaster. And while I'm over there, they have this apartment, I guess, that's net zero. Now, it was just a demo. Nobody's living in it, and they hadn't produced any yet. But it gave us the idea. And also, none of us would probably live in that one, because it was so small and the appliances were so small. It's not our lifestyle. But it gave us the idea. So we set up a meeting with BYD and KB Homes. Now remember, they don't even speak the same language. I mean, this is really an interesting mix of people that we brought together. But I'm the mayor, and so when I ask them to do it, they got to come. And later, they even told me they thought they were just patronizing me. You know, both BYD and KB Homes said that. But as we talked about it, and I said, so what is it going to take me to get you to build an affordable net zero home? Can't be done. Can't be done. They were just positive about that. He said, okay, so what would it take to just try to do it? And they will waive permit fees. Okay, so we waived permit fees for 3 houses. But then it came up that their biggest concern was permitting. How long was it going to take to get a permit? And so I looked at my watch and I said, how long do you want it to take? Later, I found out just how revolutionary that was, that apparently doesn't happen, you know? But it did happen. And so they agreed to do it. But they weren't doing it. So I'm on the phone to China, and I'm on the phone to them, and I'm calling the vice president of BYD, and where the hell are my panels? You know? And she tells the story later that she'd never experienced something like that, where the mayor of a city was actually pushing a project rather than holding a project back. Now, later I found out maybe we needed some different approvals to do this that we didn't quite have. But we got some friends in Sacramento. And 4 months after that meeting, we flipped the switch on an affordable net zero house. 4 months. That's what it takes when government, that's what happens when government is helping and pushing and wanting it to occur rather than pushing back change. And now KB Homes has the 2.0 house. This house is so cool. It's the cost of making it net zero is dropped to $40,000. Now, keep in mind what that means. Yeah, the house cost more money, but that's your utility bill. The average utility, total utilities, is $43. If you start buying, you got to change business models. But if you buy a house like you buy a car, I mean, I don't care what the car costs. I care what my monthly payment is, right? I mean, that's why we have leases. We have all these different vehicles to do it. The same is true with a house. The homeowner, if he's going to live in the house, that's his major concern. But most houses are being purchased by investors. And so the business model has to change. Because the tenant, the tenant buys the light bulbs. And, you know, we're talking LED light bulbs in the entire house. They're expensive. The tenant pays the water bill. Oh, this house uses 30% of the water of the same house without these modifications. 30%. If we started mandating that today throughout the state of California, we could get ahead of this water problem. Because it's not going away. It's not going to fix itself. We could get ahead of these problems. But it takes city councils and mayors to do it. And, you know, quite frankly, the problem with most elected officials, you want to stay in office, don't do anything. You know? Seriously, there's inertia in elections. Once you're in, you can stay there pretty much. Every time you step out, you're getting a little bit outside your circle of comfort, and you can get kicked out. And, you know, I keep telling people when they finally get rid of me, then I'll know I was successful. I'll have pushed them to the limit. You know? But now, KB is offering homes with this type of utility bill. Now, what they also discovered in it is, because they really embraced this idea, I just love them. They hire an independent company to come in and inspect every home for its energy efficiency. Same builder, same subcontractors, same wood, same tile, same everything. Without the inspection, 30% less efficient. The subcontractors, just knowing that it's going to be inspected for its energy efficiency, there's a 30% increase. Now, how hard would it be for us to make that part of the inspection plan for cities? And we don't have to pay for it. We don't even have to do it. You know, it's part of the process that the developer has to pay. We just outsource it all. A 30% increase in how well we use energy, just by that one little change. Because it's the envelope that will determine really if we get a handle on this. You know, the envelope of the house. From that house experience with BYD, you had LA, you had Long Beach, you had everybody competing for BYD to build their electric buses. And they came to Lancaster, to people's anger, in a lot of cases. They were not happy with that. But they chose Lancaster. And what they said, what the president of BYD America said, is she said in Lancaster they weren't trying to get us to come all the time. They were talking to us about technology. They were talking to us about what we can do about climate change. What can we do with building that house? They ended up calling me the project manager on that house, without my knowledge. And so we got this incredible business in Lancaster. And we also got their battery. What they're building is they're building storage terminals that you save the power that's generated at night from the wind or whatever, or even during the day when it's not being used, and you discharge it back onto the grid, and it solves the storage problem or makes a big dent in it. The more we got into this, the more we realized that we were changing a lot of business plans. You know, the utilities, they're decent people, they're good people, they don't want to destroy the planet. But why they're the executives is because they have the ability to predict what's going to happen tomorrow. They can recognize patterns, and they can predict what's going to happen. And that's why they get to fly in the corporate jet. You know? And that's a big deal. You want to be able to fly in the corporate jet. Solar changes all of that. They don't know what the patterns are. They don't know how to predict what's happening tomorrow. One of the projects we did was with Bill Gross, was a mirror technology, you know, where they reflect the sun onto the, and he was able to do it economically in a feasible way. And then the price of PV dropped 67%. He was out of business. You know, it's a volatile industry. And the people that are in it have to accept the volatility of it. But fortunately, that particular plant, somebody came along and bought it and realized if we used molten salts, meaning they heat the salts and then they heat the fluid that turns the turbine, you can produce energy at night. Now, 2 years later, that's going to be commercially viable, probably better than PV. We don't know, it's going to be the test facility. And we became a community aggregate. We're going to start buying power and selling it. Now, that's pretty cool, because we can do it a lot cheaper than the utility, a lot cheaper. One of the problems with the grid, we have to recognize, it is fragile. It is so huge, it's fragile. The wave of the future is going to be cities having their own power off the grid. There'll be some interconnection, but certainly not what it is today. And we have the ability to do that now because solar is economically feasible. But incredible resistance because you're changing business plans. An example of that is, you know, once you start thinking of all this stuff, you go crazy. You know, I mean, you really get involved, you know. You look at everything, can we change this, can we change that, you know, what can we do? One of the things we looked at was streetlights. They charge us a fortune to maintain the streetlights. So what I wanted to do was just make them go to LED lights. I want to, you know, it was consistent with the theme of being net zero. And we meet with all these guys. And they didn't really like me to begin with because I'm a class action lawyer, and they had an unfortunate experience in court with me. So, but they came, and they're giving me all these reasons why they can't put LED lights up in our city. And I said, well, you know, talk to your lawyers. I've met them. They're really smart people. They didn't think that was funny either. But at the end of the day, the answer was no. They were not going to convert, make that one little change. So then we looked at the economics of it. We bought the streetlights. Not only did we save a fortune by buying those streetlights and maintaining them ourselves, we're now switching them to LED, not costing us anything because of, you know, you work a deal with the companies doing it. But you know what a streetlight does for you? It's a module. They will blink when somebody calls 911. You know what that does to our response times? You know, you can put Wi-Fi on them. There's some indication you can put telephone on them. There's, you know, the cell telephones. You can get rid of those ugly cell towers. You can dim them and cut the energy costs. If there's an emergency, you can do lanes, escape lanes, showing people how to get wherever they need to go. There's these amazing things you can do with streetlights for less money. The economics of this are truly shocking when you start getting into it. But I think what's going to destroy the planet is the feeling by people, or the belief by people, that Washington is going to come and save us, that Obama is going to save us. Well, guess what? He can't, because he doesn't issue building permits. I do. It is the mayors of this country that will either save it or let it collapse. And we have the tools in our hands right now, and the ability, the technological ability, everything is in our hands to just tell them, you got to build net zero houses because you can do it. And it is better for the homeowner when you do it. And you just got to take the heat, or otherwise we're going to take a lot more heat of a different kind. It's not the insatiability of the few. It is the apathy of the many that is causing this. And as I've spoke for the last 20 minutes, it is 20 minutes closer. And it really is that bad. And they truly are out of time. We can no longer afford to be complacent. If ever we've raised our voices, and if ever we've striven to do the right thing, this is it. And not for us. But I don't have any doubt that if we don't do something really, really fast and big to solve this, those children will not see the 62 years I've seen. And they will not do it in the comfort that I've done it in. We have to get louder. We have to get more involved. There isn't a day that goes by I am not sending this message out. And I would hope that you might do the same. Thank you.